I always worry no one's going to turn up. Right, as you know, the government recently released a white paper on higher education, and it called it Putting Students at the Heart of the System. So what we decided to do was to ask a few of our students to reflect on their experiences at the beginning of term to see what they had to say about whether we put them at the heart of our system. So I just want you to listen to what they have to say.
Basically, on the first day, I never received my induction pack because it got lost in the post apparently. So when I first arrived at the uni, they told me to go to reception to get my library card and to get an induction into how to use the library and things. When I went to reception, they said that I should go to some other building where the other people were registering and register late. But they said that since it wasn't my turn to register, I can't register there to go to the library to get my card, and they'll give me an induction. I went to the library, said it wasn't their responsibility, so I was made to go back to reception and tell them what do I do now? It was nuts.
I'm staying in Digby Hall, and it's really nice there and everything, except that we were told in the prospectus that it would come with, I think it was a bar, a common room, a dining hall, and a pool table area. And when we got there, we found out that it was locked, and so those services do exist, but we just don't happen to have access to them.
I had to register for my course, but my student loan hadn't gone in, and to register you have to pay your fees, but because my student loan hadn't gone in, I couldn't pay my fees, so I was in a catch-22 situation. So I went to the student welfare office and spoke to a gentleman there, and he managed to sort the situation out for me, and he allowed me to register without paying my fees, and he's also sorted out so I can pay my tuition fees in 3 payments, so I've now got enough money left to pay for my accommodation, and it's really, really helped me out, and I was so impressed with that service. I didn't even know it was there before, and I was just really, really pleased about that.
I was just sort of told, well, this turn up here on your first day and that's it, and everyone else seemed to have a timetable, and I was there what do I do? And in the end I had to go on the website on Blackboard, trawl through all the lectures, all the things, and pinpoint my name out of everything and put it in. So I actually had a timetable, and even now I don't know if there's something I'm missing.
I was a modern languages student, so obviously I had a year abroad, 4-year degree, so I was lucky enough to go to Paris and Zaragoza in Spain. We were in quite a lot of contact with the international office, which they were really helpful actually, the Erasmus team in particular. They answer any emails. If we have any problems, we can't find somewhere to live, do you have any advice, anything like that, they're straight on there emailing us back.
In the United States, we're able to take classes from different departments, and so if we want to take an English class, a psychology class, a physics class, we can do that. When we got here, it was very different, and we had to register 3 different times. So we registered once online, and then we had to take a piece of paper around to all the different departments and have them sign off on the classes we wanted. And then we had to take that piece of paper to someone else and have them register us. And I know that you somehow got registered for a class that you didn't actually register for.
And I'm still trying to get out of it.
The cafe in the MSB has just been redeveloped, and we've got a really nice new cafe. It's really modern, really trendy. It's fantastic. The only problem is it does close at 3:30 in the afternoon, so when our lectures finish at 5:30, we've got a 2-hour gap where we can't get our caffeine fix in the afternoon. So if it could stay open a little bit later, that would be fantastic.
What you want to do while you're listening to that is think about if we'd caught some other students, what they might have said about any service or support that you provide. But we didn't leave it there. We thought we should also ask some of our colleagues to reflect on their thoughts about how we manage the system.
I think when it comes to the student experience, what professional services do really well is care about the students.
We try to make them welcome, we try to make it easier for them to get through their studies by giving them all the things they need.
The other thing you see, I think, is a great deal of flexibility. So staff bend over backwards really for their students.
What professional services aren't doing so well is perhaps understanding how everything fits together.
I don't think we see the end-to-end process that the student sees. The student comes to our department for one thing, but then it visits lots of other departments in the university for different facilities and experience, and I don't think we ever think about what happens there.
We're all part of a chain, we're all links in a chain, and that chain is the student experience from start to finish. But at the moment there are too many broken links in that chain, and the result of that is that the service we offer can be quite fragmented.
The other area where I feel we don't do so well is that there's probably an over-reliance on individual knowledge and personal contacts. So you typically find business continuity issues in small offices, small departments of the university, and if one individual happens to be away, you can get a query or an issue that just doesn't get dealt with.
If I could make one improvement to professional services, it would be to share information. There's a lot of areas where we're duplicating work and not sharing information amongst different departments. It then delays responses to the students.
Professional services could, in the first instance, consider more what the student wants, rather than try and fit the student into the system we have.
Another area I think is around the need to build trust between academic departments, colleges and the central corporate services. And again, there are a number of ways you can do that, but a good way for me would be bringing people together in teams and just collaboratively working together to solve a problem and improve the service we're delivering to students.
Do you recognise any of that, or do you think we just picked these people off the street and interviewed them? Now, I want you to imagine something different. Imagine that it wasn't students that we wanted to put at the heart of our system. Imagine that it was washing machines. So here's a picture of a washing machine that isn't doing its job very effectively. That is if you want your clothes washing as opposed to the floor and the laundry. And our job, we're repair engineers, so our job is to repair washing machines. So what I want you to tell me is what would stop us from repairing the washing machine? Just shout out the ideas. Cost. So I'm the repairman or the repair person, I'm the engineer, and I need to get to this washing machine. What is going to stop me doing it? What's going to stop me or you as the person who is the engineer fixing the washing machine? What's going to prevent me fixing it? Roadworks and accidents. Okay, roadworks. A few more.
No tools.
No tools. Yep.
I don't know what's wrong.
I don't know what's wrong
Machine.
with the machine. Yeah, I've got to grant that. This is. Oh. I haven't got the right equipment.
No, parking. You have to park near enough.
Oh, parking. Okay, you can't park. You can't park close enough. Couple more.
Information about where to go.
Oh, where to go? Yeah, don't know where it is. So where is it?
Accessibility.
Accessibility of what?
The washing machine.
Oh, because the customer's out. Yeah, that sort of thing. Customers on holiday.
Some kind of contract defining what we're supposed to do and what they can expect, that kind of stuff.
Why is the contract an obstacle?
Well, we don't have something, sort of agreements with customers.
Okay, so the engineer not in contract to fix whatever's wrong. Okay? Not authorised, similar sort of thing, yeah?
Not being able to arrange a convenient time for the engineer to
Yeah. That's a bit. Yeah, that's good. That's similar to the customer not being there. Couple more. Parts, wrong parts. Yeah. What else? Okay. Yeah. Only trained on ones that don't break. I did ask someone to do this for me and they bloody refused. I said, I'm not doing it. You do it, your writing's neater than mine. Well, one more. Obsolete model. Okay, what was the one other? Wrong information about what?
What's been given to the engineer.
Okay, right.
So you get there into the video player.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks very much. What we're going to do is we're just going to run down these and try and classify them. Now, to get the engineer to the washing machine requires a system which takes the call, alerts the engineer, provides him or her with the tools, the van and the parts, gets him or her to the malfunctioning washing machine. So that's what I mean by a system. I'm going to talk about systems. It's about the processes, the procedures, the protocols. I don't just mean an IT system. So I'll be talking about systems a lot through this, and that's what I mean by it. So we'll look at this and we'll say, what of these obstacles are faults of a system, and what is the fault of the engineer, the fault of the individual? So if we run down them, it's either S for system or I for individual. So the roadworks, whose fault is that? Who's to blame for the problem with the roadworks? The system. And that's because if you knew where you were getting to, you'd have some information about whether the roadworks were there. You'd expect your office, your HQ to have worked that out. What's the second one say? Oh, no tools. Sorry, no tools. Whose fault's that? The individual. It's the engineer's fault because he didn't put the tools in the van? Or is it the system's fault because he didn't have the right tools? You've got to know why he hasn't got any tools. So either he's insane, thinking that he can go to a washing machine and fix it with his bare hands, or there was something wrong in the system that didn't get the tools into the van.
It's a system problem. The good system wouldn't allow him to go on the call without tools.
Right, thank you very much, Mike. Don't know what's wrong. The engineer doesn't know what's wrong. Whose fault's that? Yeah, because someone should have told him, or her. The parking, whose fault's that? System Highways Agency, isn't it? Of course it is. Where is it? Doesn't know where it is. Whose fault? Accessing the washing machine, finding out when it's a good time to go and fix it. It's not in the contract. The engineer turns up, wrong kind of washing machine. Sorry, we don't fix the tubes at the end. We only do the bits over on the right side. Whose fault's that? Can't arrange your time, we've done that. Got the wrong parts. Yeah? So the individual is completely blameless for anything that goes wrong. And so when the engineer turns up and says, I can't fix it, not my fault, love. It's the system. Anyway, all right. So, good God, what's someone say? Oh, only trained in one type of washing machine. Whose fault's that? I'm not trained on this one. And given the wrong information, it turns out to be a video recorder. That's the customer, actually, because they should have recognised the difference. Okay. So what should we conclude from this? That most of the time, people aren't necessarily the cause of a poor service, it's the system that controls the way we work. Now, there's a saying that a poor process will defeat a good manager, but a good process can compensate for a poor manager. So colleagues in those areas that were lightly criticised by students earlier, you shouldn't take it personally. I doubt there's anyone to blame, but there are definitely systems which we all need to improve. Now, some of your colleagues have been working on some of our systems and processes, and we should hear what they have to say about it.
The Systems Thinking project is a review of all of the admissions processes across the university. We gathered a team across corporate services to look at the admissions process from the point of receiving the application and even to the point of inquiry, all the way to becoming a registered student. We've taken all of that data from our applicants and analysed it and started to categorise it in what an applicant would define as, value work, what they want out of us. So it became very clear that what they actually wanted from us was their decision quickly, they wanted it efficiently, and they wanted it tailored and simple for them. I think what was surprising to me when we looked at the data was I was always aware that the paper process, the paper form slowed the process down. But I hadn't realised to what extent that had done. Specific examples includes, on average, taking 8 days for a UCAS form to arrive in the office before a decision's even made, and how long that will take for the decision to get to the applicant. I think what also surprised me was how little we monitored from the applicant's point of view. We reject applicants, and obviously applicants withdraw, but we don't monitor why we've rejected them or why they've withdrawn. So there was a lot of information that we weren't gathering that would answer questions to why we're not making these people students.
Okay, there's some thoughts from a colleague who's leading a team looking at the admission system. Now, some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, this is all very well and good, but it's got nothing to do with me because I don't deal with students. You may also be thinking that actually universities have got a higher calling than worrying about the petty needs and wants of the great unwashed. And as some of you will recall, in previous sessions when we've talked about what's the role of the universities, it was the quote from Nehru that caught our attention when he said that a university stands for humanism, for tolerance, for reason, for progress, for the adventure of ideas and the search for truth. It stands for the onward march of the human race towards even higher objectives. If the universities discharge their duty, then it is well for the nation and the people. So we should start at the beginning. If that's the purpose of a university, what's the purpose of our jobs? So I want you to take a moment with your voting stick in your hand to think about what you do every day, the trials and tribulations, the heartache and the ecstasy. And I want you to think about, in general terms, what you think the purpose of your job is. So, very broadly speaking, think about your job and which one of those categories would it fit. So, it's your job to provide a service to the students of the university. So are you providing a service? Is that generally what you're doing? You're supporting more directly the research and teaching. Are you someone who in a position where it's about the leadership that you provide? Or do you serve the whims of senior staff? Or possibly you have absolutely no idea what the purpose of the job is, but at least the office is dry. Okay, so if you get voting as quick as you can, tell me what you think best fits what you think the purpose of your job is. Okay, so that was interesting. The majority of you felt that you were providing the service to students. Now, if I would have voted, I would have voted to provide leadership. Good, silence, exactly what I wanted. So thinking about the purpose of your job, who's the customer? Who's on the receiving end of it? Don't worry about the word customer. If you're going to get your knickers in a twist, don't just relax for a second and think, who am I working for? Who is on the receiving end of what I do? Okay? So, is it students, your academic colleagues, is it colleagues here, your professional services, people outside the university, all of the above? Or is it, in your considered opinion, that customer is such an alienating label simply used by the capitalist bourgeoisie to legitimise the destructive dogma of consumerism? Right, okay, let's see what we thought. Oh, right, okay. And 4% of you are Marxists. Jolly good. We're a broad church, university. We can cope with that. So a combination. All right, well, that's interesting. That's something you need to bear in mind. Now, how would I have answered it? I would have answered the same, actually. I would have answered that it was all or some of the above. Okay, so you've been thinking about your purpose, and you're thinking about who the purpose is for. So, the $6 million question, of course, and the question that I left some of you with at the end of the last presentation was, how do you know how well you're achieving the purpose? How do you know you're doing a good job from the perspective of the people you're serving or supporting? How do you know how well the system of which you're a part is working? So, and what you need for that is measures. Do you have measures? You need data. So, thinking about the purpose of your job, thinking about when you do your job and and the customers you're working to, how much information do you have? Do you have data? Are there things that you look at, either yourself or with your manager? Do you look at information to tell you about the performance? Yeah? So yes, actually, it's just you're overwhelmed with it. Yes, you've got access to some data, which tells you how well you're doing your job, how well the system's working from the perspective of the customer. No, you haven't got it, but if you thought about it, you can think of what you would measure. Or do you find it very difficult to think about what you'd actually measure? You know, what quantitative information would you get to tell you that? Okay, so most of us do have some sort of data. Now, what I haven't got time to go into in this setting is whether it's the right data, giving you valid information about performance, but it's interesting to hear that most of you have something. Now, if I was to answer that, actually, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what I personally would measure in terms of my performance as the registrar. The Vice-Chancellor has clear views on my performance, and he regularly shares them with me, and I suppose that I could come out wearing a 1 to 10 on the front of my shirt, and depending on how well the meeting had gone. But that's the only measure I could think of. Okay. Now, as you're thinking about this, thinking about your job, thinking about the customer, thinking about how well you're doing and the measures you've got, what instinctively comes to mind as the main obstacle to improving it? And what instinctive do you think, if only X, if only I could work more closely with my colleagues, or if they would work more closely with me, if only they'd get my emails answered in a nanosecond, if I had more resources, more training, I had more time? Or is it the IT system, if only the IT system worked better for me? Or is it my manager, had more support from them? Or you may think that everything is tickety-boo and that there aren't any obstacles you want to share with us. Ah, right, very good. That fits the rest of the presentation. How handy. Right. So, yes, working more closely with colleagues, more resources, yeah, predictable. Anyway, IT, yeah. And 6% of you are happy. Good. It's good to know that some of you provide an excellent service, you've got all the measures you need, and your customers are very satisfied. Good. Okay. Now, you may be wondering why I've taken you through these questions. Well, once we know our purpose, and we have measures for assessing how well we're achieving that purpose from the perspective of the people on the receiving end of it, then we're better prepared to meet the challenges of the future. And right now, we do face very challenging and uncertain times. So the question I want to answer for you, is what are the implications for us of the recently announced changes to the funding of higher education in England? Fascinating topic, but bear with me. Right, let's first of all see what the Minister here, David Willetts, let's see what he had to say about the white paper earlier in the year, just before it was released. Oh, I need to do that.
We're going to reward the universities that students choose to go to. And of course, that involves a whole host of judgments that young people will make. But we're confident that this will be a system that is far more focused on the quality of the education experience for the student, because universities will be looking out to the students, providing them with more information, offering them more choice, instead of just having a fixed quota of places for each individual university, and without the information about what to expect at university.
He said, I think he said, without a fixed quota of places. I think he's got that wrong, because there's a fixed quota of places. We'll come to that in a minute. We'll press on anyway, see if he can do better this time.
Well, nobody can know until the students start university exactly what the fees will be, but we're expecting the average level of fees to be significantly below £9,000.
He said significantly below, didn't he? He didn't say the vast majority of universities will charge 9,000.
We're also transforming the information available to students. We're also cutting the burden of regulation and red tape on universities. We're also, of course, looking to make it easier for the popular universities to expand.
Cutting the burden of red tape and regulation? Did he say that? He must have been wrong. He meant to say, we're increasing the burden of regulation and red tape. And I think he meant to say, we're allowing some popular universities to expand.
Put all that together and you get a transformation of the student experience at university, and we think that's the right thing to do.
A transformation. That's what the government's after, a transformation in the system of education. And in doing so, in opening up this debate, they're actually questioning the role and purpose of universities. And what the government has done is they've found the sector guilty of 3 offences. Guilty as charged. The first thing we've been found guilty of is not doing enough to support the economy. They said it in 1919 and they're saying it again now. The government has initiated another review of the relationship between universities and industry. It continues to echo concerns raised by business leaders that graduates aren't prepared enough for the world of work. What they expect us to do is transform the existing world of work, which you're all familiar with, into the world of work of the future. And secondly, it has found us guilty of not doing enough to support students. And despite the high levels of student satisfaction, which are reported every year in the annual National Student Survey, the government focuses on anecdotal problems in individual universities to justify the charge that the sector is not doing enough to assure quality of teaching or of student support. It's still concerned we're not doing enough to widen participation, and also that not enough students get the jobs that they want, not enough graduates get the jobs that they want. Now here is an illustration of the government's concerns. This, as you will be familiar with, is the existing experience of a student paying £3,000. The demand for more is unmet. And what the future holds, of course, is a system in which there'll be fewer students, of course, £9,000, but they'll be far more attentive, they'll be better dressed, and they'll have more space in the lecture theatres. And thirdly, we've been found guilty of being poorly led and inefficiently managed. Hence, we've been sentenced to another efficiency review, and there is continued pressure for us to share our services. Again, I will help illustrate this for you. Here's an illustration of the current way of dealing with finances within the institution. As you can see, we are clueless when it comes to knowing what to do with our resources, and James is often heard to say these sort of things in meetings. And he's not here, actually, is he? No. However, the future, of course, will be this chap. Smart, sophisticated, rather sexy. That is the future of the management of universities. Now, I will say that actually, if the government's got anything right, they're probably a bit right on the issue about the way universities are managed. We're not as good as we should be. Now, as a consequence of finding the sector guilty, we've been sentenced. We've been sentenced to even greater competition, and in particular, competition from private or for-profit providers of higher education. Now, the government didn't raise the cap on the fees to £9,000 just to save money. In fact, it's a moot point whether they would save any money. But because they're committed to a political philosophy which dictates that competition drives up quality. It's a philosophy. That students, given a choice, will choose good universities over bad, they will pay for the best they can afford, they will look for value for money, and as a consequence of that, universities will respond more fully to the demands of those students. And the future, of course, will look like this. That higher education will be subject to the demands of the market, just like any other product. And the Minister, as you've heard him say, believes that exposing universities to the chill wind of the market will improve what we have to offer. In fact, they've gone so far as to say that institutions which don't respond well in the market will be allowed to fail. And as most of you know, a university has never failed, but that's the prospect of the new regime. And finally, we've also been condemned to greater management, more red tape and regulation, which is ironic given that the government is talking tough about the liberalisation of the market, about greater student choice, and then it has imposed on the sector a much more restrictive admissions regime, for example, and one which everyone agrees will work against wider participation. Now, I'm going to try and explain the situation from the government's point of view. This is the dilemma the government faces. As you've heard me say, and as you heard the Minister say, if students pay, they'll make wiser choices. Student choice will drive up quality. Students and universities therefore need to be able to operate in a more open market, where the universities are more free to set prices, they're freer to take students, and the students themselves are in a position to have greater choice. The problem is, of course, that most students can't afford to pay up front, so they need to borrow the money. So the government steps in and it makes loans available. The problem is that lending costs money, and the government needs to control its costs. So the government is still seeking ways to control the number of students, which could restrict choice and is against the principles of the market. And as you already have seen, actually the higher fees, despite giving the universities the freedom to charge higher fees when a lot of universities chose to, that caused problems for the government because it led to bad headlines, and so the government feels the need now to intervene to try and control fees. So the government is stuck on the horns of this dilemma. It wants a free market and it wants to control what's happening in that market. And the government has responded in two ways, which I'm going to explain. First of all, there will be some expansion of a market, but it's just going to punish universities which it considers, not the market, which it considers as overpriced. So it is going to cut 20,000 student places and then redistribute those to the universities charging less than 7,500, which was the figure the government first thought of. That's what they thought the majority of universities would charge, 7,500, not 9,000. And that 20,000 places will be redistributed to those lower price institutions, as well as giving private providers the opportunity to bid for public money. And they will increase the choice for some students without increasing the risk of increasing the total number of students within the system. Now I'm going to try and explain this, and it's not, believe me, it's complicated. For almost 100 years, the government's relationship with universities has been managed through Equango, the Higher Education Funding Council for England. And over the last 20 years, the council has enabled the government to control the cost of higher education by controlling the number of UK EU students in it. So broadly speaking, the system we've been under for some time now is that if a university has too many students, if it over-recruits, the Funding Council could require the university to cut its intake. If it had too few students, the Funding Council could cut its resources. Broadly speaking, the council was in a position of controlling the number of students in that way. Now next year, each university, including Leicester, we will get a quota. Contrary to what David Willett said, we will be given a fixed quota of students who we can recruit, and the criteria for that will be the students have only achieved ABB in their A levels or lower. So they're actually restricting the number of students we can recruit with specific A levels, ABB or lower. For students who achieve AAB, i.e. the higher A level scores, there won't be a quota for that, and universities will be free to admit as many students as they want. Okay? So there is some liberalisation, greater choice for those students who get AAB, but restricted choice for those who don't. Now evidently, there's a finite number of students who achieve AAB or above. And those students tend to be concentrated in the top universities. So it just allows the best students to continue to pick places or choose places at the best universities. And that was the point the Minister was making about allowing some popular universities to expand. I'll try and explain that. So we've got a student control number, and that is students who achieve ABB or below. The students that achieve AAB or higher, they can go where they want, and universities are free to take as many as they want. So these students, they're happy campers because they have got greater freedom. They are more likely to get into the university of their choice because the university will not be restricted on the number of students it can take. So they're more likely to go where they want to. Now this group, of course, they're less likely to want to go where they want to go. Because if you've got ABB, for example, you're still a very high-performing student, but you're more likely not to be able to get into the university of your choice because there's a restriction on the number of such students that that university can recruit. And it'll be trying to recruit more of the AAB students. So actually for that group, it's likely to be worse. They'll be worse off. They won't have as much choice. Now, what does it mean for Leicester? Well, last year, 43% of our students achieved AAB or higher. Now, that's good news for us because it showed how popular Leicester has become over recent years. The problem is that a few of our key competitor universities are already more established in the AAB market, i.e. they're stronger than we are with that group of students. And they're more likely to want to expand that number of AAB students because remember they've all had a cut to create this pot of 20,000. So the universities will want to expand where they can to make up for that cut in numbers. Because Leicester is sometimes second choice of the AAB candidates who apply to these key competitors like Birmingham and Nottingham and Warwick, then we could lose some of those students. And we won't be able to replace them with students who achieve lower A-level scores because, of course, they're restricted. And the net effect is that unless we can recruit more AAB students next year than we did this year, then our intake will fall. It's hard to say by how many. It could be as 110 students, it could be 1,010. And if we lost this number every year for the next few years, it would be very damaging to the university. For every 110 students fewer we recruit next year over this year, it would cost us £1 million in fee income. Just in fee income account, alone, 110 students less, £1 million lost in fee income. You lose 1,000 students, you lose £10 million. So that's the challenge that we face at the minute. Okay? It's about we're in very, very, very intense competition for the best students. And we know some of our competitors, the students, some of them are more likely to go there unless we can do things to persuade them to come here. I want to go back and think about what the implications are for us as the professional services. Okay? Well, remind us of the purpose of the university. It's very straightforward. Create and disseminate knowledge. And we're different from other universities, as you know, in that we seek to offer a high-quality, research-led teaching experience, but to a diverse range of students. And in order to be successful, we have to do 3 simple things. We have to sustain our research so that it's internationally recognised. We have to attract more applications than we have places, i.e. we have to be popular. And evidently, the students, when they're here, have to feel that they've had an interesting and worthwhile time and they leave us being supportive and sympathetic to the university. That's all we have to do. Now, the professional services, that's us, the staff who do not have teaching and research commitments, that's you lot in here, me, and other colleagues. Our role, I have a simple statement for you, is to help shape the future of the university. Using our expertise, because we're experts in what we do. Our academics are expert in the teaching and research that they do. And we have to provide excellent services because we expect our academic colleagues to provide excellent teaching and we expect them to research at the highest levels so that their research is internationally recognised. So that means we have to be accountable for delivering excellence as well. And when we do that, we enable the academic mission of the institution. We enable that world-changing research and we enable the teaching in an inclusive academic culture. Now, we're partners in, as I've stressed, we're partners in the mission of the institution. Our students and academic colleagues require us to fulfil this role successfully. And to achieve this, we need to continually to seek to improve the services we offer. And to do that, as I've already stressed to you, we have to understand our purpose, your purpose locally, what you do locally every day, and how well you're achieving that purpose. And I'm going to reiterate what I said in my presentation before, that in order to face these challenges of the future, we need to do about 3 things, 3 general things. The first is, as was clear from the talking heads and was clear from the way you acknowledged the questions, that we need to work more closely together. We can't allow the hierarchy of the institution or the structures of the organisation to be barriers to collaboration and cooperation. We have to end the divide, which is mainly a mental divide, between the corporate services and the administrative and support staff who work in departments and colleges. We have to create a more unified administration, and to move from the idea of a corporate service in the centre and administrating elsewhere, we have to move to a concept of where there are just professional services. And that's what we provide. We have a common aim. We don't have different aims. We don't have departmental aims and divisional aims. We have a common purpose in serving the academic mission of the institution. So there is only one administration. There is only one group of professional services. There are not multiple pockets. There are not corporate services or central services and others. That is the wrong way to look at the way the university works. If you're a student and you're on the receiving end of a system, that system doesn't acknowledge a good system, a good process, does not acknowledge those boundaries. Where systems get caught up, where processes get caught up, is where those boundaries between us become more substantive than they need be. That's why it's about being collaborative, it's about talking to each other, about working together in teams, as Jeff said. Okay? The second thing is we have to take responsibility to understand and analyse the systems and processes we manage from end to end. We have a responsibility to seek their continual improvement, and our role is not simply to turn the handle, but it's to make things better, to solve the problems that we identify. And I'll leave you with a quote from Gandhi, which you've seen before, and he was a man who knew what he was talking about. So how are we going to take this forward? Well, I'm not leaving it now to exhortations in these annual presentations. Later this term, I'll be writing to each of you to ask you to answer some of the questions which we've discussed today, and requiring all areas to draw up plans for improvements in their service and the support they provide, and identifying measures which can demonstrate improvement from the perspective of the customer or whoever is on the receiving end of the service or support. Now, I know some people have already started doing this. I'm going to leave Laura to say a few words.
We are all part of the professional services of this university. So regardless of where we're located or what our roles are, we are professional services. We have a range of skills, a range of expertise that make us a professional staff category in our own right. And I think it's time that we started recognising that a bit more and celebrating that fact.
Right. I am going to finish with a question. Now, sorry I've had to race through some of that. So, bearing in mind everything that you've heard, bearing in mind the kind of questions I'm asking you to think about, bearing in mind the challenges of the future, and I've only really gone through the challenges that we face in terms of full-time UK undergraduate recruitment. There are challenges on the research agenda, there are challenges in terms of our reputation, the internationalisation agenda. How do you feel about it now? How do you feel about things? So yes, keen to get on with it? Yes, but need time to think about it? Yes, probably. Or are you Corporal Fraser? Okay, let's see if we can get a vote on that. Good, that's not too bad, okay? Now, how do I feel? There's a Chinese proverb which says that it is a curse to live in interesting times. Well, the Chinese will dominate the world in a few years, but they don't get everything right. I think it is the best time to be working in the sector. It is challenging, it is interesting, and I think Leicester's better prepared than many universities. So I think if we work together, we'll be ready for that challenge.